The alliance leader, Yuan Shao, sitting in the seat of command, he looked imposing and dignified. But inside, his calculations were louder than anyone's. Preserve strength.
Understanding the mysterious East, interpreting the timeless classics. Behind myths, legends, and ancient stories lies a real world shaped by power, desire. Welcome to Mysterious East.
Chapter 1: The Birth of Heroes in a Collapsing Empire. Today, we begin Romance of the Three Kingdoms. As the old saying goes, the empire, long divided, must unite, long united, must divide. But in the eyes of true strategists, chaos is never merely a disaster. It is also an entrance ticket, a chance for the world to be reshuffled. At this stage, what we need to focus on is not simply who wins a single battle. What truly matters is how the future giants of this age seized their first opportunity at the end of the Han Dynasty. Let us first turn our eyes to a poor and forgotten corner of Zhuo County. There lived a young man named Liu Bei. From this humble starting point, one of the most successful founding teams in Chinese history would eventually be born. Most people are familiar with the story of the Oath of the Peach Garden. But if all you see in that story is brotherhood and loyalty, then you have underestimated Liu Bei. At that time, Liu Bei owned almost nothing. He was so poor that he still made a living by selling straw sandals and woven mats. Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, however, were very different men. Guan Yu was a warrior of extraordinary skill. Zhang Fei was bold, generous, and came from a family with some wealth. In terms of fighting ability, Liu Bei was not the strongest. In terms of money, he was not the richest. So why was he the one who became the elder brother? The answer lies in his precise understanding of human desire. Liu Bei offered the most valuable resource available in that age: the political legitimacy of the Han imperial bloodline, and a grand vision. To serve the state above, and bring peace to the common people below. In modern terms, this was very much like a startup. Why would a technical expert and an early investor follow a CEO who had almost nothing? Because that CEO could tell a story big enough to go public. He could define the company's mission, values, and future. The Oath of the Peach Garden was not only a romantic tale of brotherhood. At its core, it was the reorganization of three different kinds of resources from three different social levels through a spiritual contract. This gives us a very clear lesson for the modern world. In the earliest stage of building a team, if you have no money and no resources, then you must have the ability to define a vision. You must use values to bind your core partners. A team held together only by profit can walk for a while. But a team held together by ideals can walk much farther. However, while Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei were still struggling their way up from the bottom, the true destroyer had already arrived at the center of imperial power in Luoyang. That man was Dong Zhuo. If the Yellow Turban Rebellion was only a disease on the skin of the Han Dynasty, then Dong Zhuo was the cancer inside its bones. He led his troops into the capital and relied on the military force in his hands to do something that many people had imagined, but no one had dared to do. He deposed the emperor. Dong Zhuo's arrival shattered every unspoken rule of politics. He was not only cruel. More importantly, he did not understand the art of power. His appetite was too ugly. His methods were too direct. He did not play the game carefully. He simply overturned the table. Yet it was precisely this chaos that gave another ambitious hero his chance to step onto the stage. That man was Cao Cao. At this moment, Cao Cao was still only a minor official among the ministers. He did not yet possess great armies or territory. But he understood one essential truth. When order collapses, whoever can stand in the name of justice and challenge evil will instantly gain enormous political reputation. And so came the famous scene of Cao Cao presenting the dagger. In the novel, Cao Cao borrowed Wang Yun's 7-star dagger and attempted to assassinate Dong Zhuo. But Dong Zhuo saw the flash of the blade in a mirror. At that critical moment, Cao Cao reacted quickly and claimed that he had merely come to present the dagger as a gift. Then he escaped in panic. Many people read this part and think Cao Cao was simply lucky. Others feel regret that the assassination failed. But if we look one layer deeper, we may discover something else. This was a carefully designed act of self-destructive political marketing. Cao Cao was an extremely intelligent man. Did he truly not know that Lu Bu was guarding Dong Zhuo? Did he not know that the chance of killing Dong Zhuo was almost zero? Of course he knew. But he still chose to do it. Because what he was calculating was not only life and death. He was calculating reputation. When all the ministers of the court only dared to cry in private, Cao Cao was the only one who dared to draw a blade against Dong Zhuo. Whether the assassination succeeded or failed was not the most important point. As long as Cao Cao survived and escaped, he would no longer be merely an ordinary official inside the system. He would become a heroic figure in the eyes of the world, a man who had dared to oppose tyranny. And history proved that Cao Cao won this gamble. With that kneel, that offering, and that escape, he completed a transformation. He was no longer just a bureaucrat within the imperial court. He had begun to become an independent warlord. Later, when he fled to Zhongmu County and was captured by Qin Gong, Cao Cao would say one of the most shocking lines in Chinese literary history. "I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me." Many people interpret this sentence as proof of Cao Cao's selfishness and evil. But in truth, it also reveals one of the harshest rules of survival in a chaotic age. In an extreme struggle for survival, if you do not place your own survival above morality, you may become someone else's stepping stone. This is not teaching us to be selfish. It reveals a brutal truth. In a zero-sum environment, excessive moral purity can often become a burden for those who want to achieve great things. Cao Cao's treachery was a form of extreme pragmatism, a deep understanding and use of the darker side of human nature. After the failed assassination, Cao Cao fled back to Chenlu in a state of great distress. He spent his family fortune, raised the banner of loyalty and righteousness, and issued a proclamation calling for the campaign against Dong Zhuo. That proclamation was like a bomb dropped into deep water. In an instant, it shook the entire realm. Warlords from every region began to respond. Some came for reputation. Some came for profit. Soon, the 18 warlords would gather at Hulao Pass. A grand campaign seemed ready to begin. But beneath its heroic appearance, this was never a pure alliance of justice. It was a game of power, filled with private calculations. Liu Bei's grassroots team, Cao Cao's elite path, and Yuan Shao's aristocratic bloc would all collide on this enormous stage. The entrance tickets to the Age of Chaos had already been handed out. Who could survive to the end would depend not only on whose blade was faster, but on who understood the human heart more deeply. At this moment of gathering storms, Hua Xiong was already standing before the pass, holding his great blade and challenging the allied army. And the red-faced warrior who would soon slay Hua Xiong before the wine turned cold was narrowing his phoenix eyes, waiting for the moment that would make his name known throughout the world. Before Hulao Pass, the drums of war thundered. The camps of the 18 warlords stretched for hundreds of li. Flags filled the sky, and armies covered the land. On the surface, this looked like a righteous army assembled to restore the Han Dynasty. But in reality, it was more like an industry summit where everyone had their own hidden agenda. They had not come here to risk their lives. They had come to show their faces, build reputation, and divide the benefits. The alliance leader, Yuan Shao, came from the powerful Yuan clan, a family with generations of high officials behind it. Sitting in the seat of command, he looked imposing and dignified. But inside, his calculations were louder than anyone's. Preserve strength. Watch from the mountain as the tigers fight. Let others bleed first. Most of the other warlords were the same. No one wanted to send his own core troops to clash head-on with Dong Zhuo's elite cavalry from Xiliang. When Hua Xiong killed several generals in succession, the atmosphere inside the Allied camp became extremely awkward. The warlords who usually boasted about the strength of their armies now all became silent cowards. This is a classic disease of large organizations. From the outside, they look enormous. They appear rich in resources and manpower. But once a real crisis arrives, each department shifts responsibility to another. Decision-making becomes slow and inefficient. No one is willing to take responsibility. And just at this moment, when everyone hesitated, a mounted archer stepped forward. Guan Yu. He was 9 chi tall, with a beard 2 chi long, phoenix eyes, and silkworm-like brows. Holding his green dragon crescent saber, he requested permission to go out and fight. Yuan Shu, a mediocre man who judged people only by birth and status, immediately shouted in anger. How dare a mere mounted archer speak so wildly here? But Cao Cao was different. He had a sharp eye for talent. Not only did he stop Yuan Shu, he personally poured a cup of warm wine for Guan Yu, wishing him victory. Pay attention to this cup of wine. It was not merely wine. It was Cao Cao's angel investment in talent. Guan Yu did not drink the wine. He only said, "Keep the wine warm. I shall return shortly." Then he mounted his horse and rode out with his blade. A moment later, the drums outside the pass thundered like the collapse of heaven and earth. Before the warlords could even react, Guan Yu had already returned, carrying Hua Xiong's head. He threw it to the ground. And that cup of wine was still warm. Slaying Hua Xiong before the wine turned cold, this scene is filled with powerful imagery and dramatic force. It not only established Guan Yu's status as a god of war, but also struck a heavy blow against the rigid hierarchy of birth and class. In an age that cared deeply about family background and social rank, Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei proved with strength that true heroes are not judged by where they come from. What followed was the even more blood-stirring battle. The 3 heroes fighting Lu Bu. Lu Bu was known as the greatest warrior of the 3 kingdoms. Mounted on the red hare horse, wielding the sky-piercing halberd, his presence carried a crushing sense of destruction. Gongsun Zan was defeated. The warlords panicked. At that moment, Zhang Fei roared like thunder and charged forward. Guan Yu soon joined the attack. Finally, Liu Bei also drew his twin swords and entered the battle. The 3 men surrounded Lu Bu and fought him in a swirling, brutal struggle. The meaning of this battle went far beyond victory or defeat. It broke the myth that Lu Bu was invincible. It also allowed Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei, this fierce and compact team, to enter the ranks of the heroes of the realm in a single moment. This is the survival rule of a startup team. If you want to become known, you must dare to challenge the leader of the industry. Even if you only fight him to a draw, you have already won. However, the victory at the front line could not hide the corruption inside the alliance. Seeing that he could no longer hold his position, Dong Zhuo set fire to Luoyang and forced the emperor to move west to Chang'an. Logically, this was the best moment to pursue him. If they had pressed forward and destroyed Dong Zhuo in one strike, the realm might have been settled. Cao Cao excitedly urged the alliance to give chase. But what about Yuan Shao and the other warlords? They drank wine, exchanged cups, and made excuses. They claimed that the army lacked provisions. They said the horses were exhausted. In short, they simply refused to move. They had come to oppose Dong Zhuo not because they truly cared about the emperor or the Han Dynasty. They had come to gain political capital. Now that Dong Zhuo had fled and territory had been left open, what they truly cared about was not the emperor's life or death, but how to seize the empty territory and expand their own power. Next chapter continues.